Welcome back. I'm going to talk in this video about gain structure. So in all of these instructional videos we've done with equalization, compression, and all the other types of sonic landscapes you can give to a mix, the crucial aspect of all of these processes is gain structure. How you get the signal from point A to point B, how you gain it at the beginning stage, how you gain it at the end stage, and how you gain it in between. So I'm going to show you on our LMC that we made through IK Multimedia how to do that, but I'm going to demonstrate it through our analog console. So in our case, my preferred digital to analog setup includes Pro Tools, Universal Audio Interface, Antelope Word Clock, and a benchmark digital to analog converter. So a lot of people, what they're using is an interface with its own digital to analog conversion. It's all valid, it's all great. I'll just show you what I've got set up to show you how I do things on the analog console. So Pro Tools, obviously, everybody knows that. I've got a universal audio interface which is clocked externally with an Antelope clock. Just sonically speaking, it's something that's pleasing, and I've always bought into the idea of external clocking being something that tightens things up, somehow makes them feel a little bit better. You don't have to do it. You can use internal clocking. It's perfectly valid, and Universal Audio's gear is very good with internal clocking. It's just something I've always done, so that's where I go to. I go from there into a benchmark digital to analog converter, and from there I set the level that goes into the console, and from the console I go into another workstation made by Steinberg called Wavelab. So the way that I check out my signals is I've got, as you can see on my meter bridge here, I've got the board, which is the input to the board, and then I've got the A to D converter, which is at the end of the chain. So if you consider the chain to be Universal Audio Interface out of Pro Tools, clocked externally and into a benchmark digital to analog converter, then going into various EQs, compressors, and anything else that we choose, it then goes back into another interface. In our case, we use a metric halo interface, and from there, which is also externally clocked with an Antelope clock, it goes into a benchmark analog to digital converter at a level that is set using our meters and all the years of experience that we know how to do to set those levels, which then let us see the correct LUFS level on the workstation on Wavelab when we put the music in there. So that's a breakdown of our chain. I'm going to just show you briefly how I go about determining the correct level. So I'm not going to demonstrate this with audio. This is going to be more of a visual demonstration. So if you look at my Pro Tools setup, I've got a song here by the Samson brothers in Cape Town, South Africa called We Live This Life. And another shout out to these guys. They're so generous, they're so spirited, and they make such great music, and they always let us use it for these demos. So thank you to them, and check out their music, the Samson brothers. What I have is a pretty dynamic mix. It starts really low. There's a big section, it goes back low, it builds up and gets to another big section. So the very first order of business, go to the clip gain area and get a visual and bring the level up visually. So there, that looks pretty good. Now I haven't heard the music yet, I'm just looking at it. From there, it's going to go through the rig as I mentioned and into my digital to analog converter. And what I'll do is as I start listening to the music, I'll adjust the input gain to the digital to analog converter, which controls the amount of gain that comes into my console. So just through years of experience, I guess, I've come up with an idea on how much level I like the first piece of gear in my chain to see, and then the rest of my chain. And then I look at the VU meters that I have, and I like to see the VU meters hovering around 0, and the A to D meters, I like to see them about 2, maybe 3, but mostly around 2 dB of gain more than the input meters. So I already know, and I can do this visually too before I start listening, I already know that the music coming into the console through all this gear and all the decisions that are going to be made through this gear, it's going to come back 2 dB hotter on the output of the console, and then I can adjust my A to D converter at the workstation, at my capture workstation, which is Wavelab, and then check my LUFS levels. I've got a console that is a single-headed, unbalanced console that allows me to drive long cable lengths without the use of op amps. It's an old analog design, and it comes in at a 0 level. We're not at a +4, we're a 0 level console. So this VU meter that I have is arbitrary. It's just within the console. It's got nothing to do with the D to A, it's got nothing to do with the A to D. It's just the way that I read this console. It's an old vintage design in its analog circuitry. It's incorporated some modern analog circuitry, and there's no rhyme or reason to it other than I built it and I know how to use it. So, how do I determine the D to A and the A to D levels? Well, as I said, I started out with the clip gain, so anybody can do that. You can find a really nice, not distorted, little bit of headroom area for that mix to live. And then I'll adjust my A to D so that I can see my meters operating in a way that I like, which hover around 0. I start to play with my gear. The A to D meters hover around +2 or so, and then I'm looking at the LUFS meters in my capture workstation. Okay, so let me show you how to do this on the LMC. I got old man eyes, so I have to switch over here so I can see. But let's just pick any random preset that a lot of people use. It's on pop rock right now. Let's see. Let's go to Americana Loose More Glue. Let's go there. Now, I mentioned before the input drive on the bottom left, and then you can look at on the chain. When you click on this area right here, it shows you your chain, and you've got makeup gain. You've also got threshold of the limiters and de-essers on the output there. So, the old adage that I've always said, less is more, is applicable here. I think one way that I would suggest using this plugin, and again, this goes into the choice. So you can use it any which way you like. You can use it as its own piece, or you can use it as a VST within a Pro Tools session. You can use it both ways. So we're talking for today's video about how to use it within a Pro Tools setup. So once you've got your clip gain, in this case I've added 3 dB to visually get this mix where I want to start working it, where it feels right. It's the same amount of dB as I would use to put it into the analog console, and since the LMC is our console in all its entirety, it's valid to also send that into it. So if you play this mix, let's just go to a big section. Now that I've leveled it up 3 dB, let's check it out. Okay, so I'm looking at this VU meter. It doesn't look too heavy. It's +2 above 0. Now this meter that you're looking at on the front of this plugin represents the second VU meter that I have on the console. So the input meter that I look at that shows me the input to the console, which essentially is the digital to analog level that goes into my gear, then goes through all the gear and goes into another set of meters that measures all of the information going on in the console and then into my workstation. So this meter on the front here represents the output of the console. In other words, my console's analog to digital meters. The analog to digital converter is the final piece in this stage where you convert and then you capture a digital file. So that's what it represents. You don't want to really get it beyond what it's looking like now. It's looking pretty good to me. So you can adjust this input drive if you like, if you want to get a little more saturation out of something in the front of the chain. Let me go back and play again there. So it's getting pretty heavy there. And then you can lower the makeup gain, all the while using these meters on the front as the output of all the processing in this chain that happens. So I hope this information helps you all, because you can see how backing it off at the input and raising that makeup gain gets those meters to look right, and raising that input gain, lowering the makeup gain, gets these meters to look right. It's all got to do with how you're saturating this equipment. And less is more. If you go in at 0 and come out at 0, that's wonderful. But if you want to get some more LUFS level, you want to maybe just bring up your makeup gain if you don't want to have more saturation and audible processing. If you want to really get in there and swamp it out and hear the processing and hear the compression, increase your input drive, lower your makeup gain, get your meters to look good. 1, 2, 3 dB over 0 on those VU meters is pretty healthy and acceptable. If you're working solely in the digital realm, you can use just the LMC. You can use it in combination with another plugin, something from FabFilter, something from the UA suite. You can combine. If you're working a combination of digital and analog, really paying attention to the gain structure, less is more, going in at 0, coming out at 0, and looking to where you want to saturate. If you want to saturate coming in, if you really want to feel that saturation, jack that input and lower that output. If you want to really feel invisible and just get the best out of each piece of equipment or plug-in, then come in low and raise that output. Work within the gain structure that helps you feel either overly saturated, undersaturated, somewhere in between, and hopefully this information helped you. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel, and we'll be seeing you out there.